Hi, it's David with Oklahoma Ham Radio, the YouTube channel, and oklahomahamradio.com. If you would, please like, subscribe, click the bell, all those YouTube things. Um, it really would help me out. But this is I guess it's video 5 in a series of videos about the phaser digital mode transceiver that's built to do FT8, and I think it's JS8 call. Excuse me. The This video coming up covers Group 5, which is where the Group 5 assembly, which is where we start adding the components for a single sideband, which is what these modes operate in. They're actually digital upper, which is the upper sideband of the signal. So it's pretty important to be able to operate there. So in this episode, we install some resistors. We install, some more 8-pin ICs, some more capacitors, some more resistors, and we build a toroid that is, or we use a toroid to build a device that has 4 wires hanging off of it. The instructions are very clear about either having the green wire on the left or the green wire on the right. Either way, it doesn't matter. But greens have to be on one side, reds have to be on one side. So it does show that in the instructions fairly clearly. So R22, that's a resistor. Q2 is another transistor that we don't want to get too hot. And then U2 and U3 are the other ICs that need to be installed. Down here it shows the section of the board that we'll be working in. So stick around. Again, please like, subscribe, click the bell, all that fun stuff. That way other people can find this. The next step is the transmit section, and then we're done. So the transmit's all over on this section of the board, so we won't be playing around over there. We'll be in the middle of the board. Thanks. Stick around. So the first part of this is to identify where all these resistors go. So there's a R18, which is a 60.4K resistor, and then you've got a bunch of 10K resistors that go in, and then a R10, which is a 10K potentiometer, which is actually, a resistor. So um, it's just identifying all of those. All of those, again, are in the middle of the board, and just make sure you get the right part to go into each one of those spots, just like we have through the rest of the board. So again, getting everything started up and soldering those parts on. So we'll go through that for a little while. I'm trying to think of any gotchas. There are quite a few resistors that do get bent over, so it the base of the resistor goes, at the bottom, and it stands straight up, and then it's bent back around. There are quite a few of those with this portion. There are also a few that do lay flat, which you get to where you're kind of surprised when you find a resistor that lays flat. So here's all of those are, let's see, 11 through 20, or 11, let's see, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, and 20 are all 10K resistors. And it does take a minute to find those. So I've got this again on 20 times speed. So if it takes me, you know, 10 seconds to find, it actually took me 20 seconds to find. Or I'm sorry, 200 seconds to find. I'm not going to torture you by making you, I say making you, by, by having you watch through me looking at the board, trying to find those, where those components go. So again, it does get pretty tight in some of these places because other components are installed. So just make sure that you don't have any solder bridges going to places that, well, make sure you don't have any solder bridges. You don't need any bridges intentionally made for sure. And it could be very negative. Another thing that you want to do is make sure that when you install these components, you don't have them touching any other components. That could be bad when you apply power, as those components touching would just bypass the resistors or whatever that's installed. Could be diodes or whatever that are installed. So here I'm just going through installing resistors and trying to make sure that they're not touching anything else. I do try to keep my soldering iron fairly clean also, so you'll see me punch it into that little Brillo pad looking thing. It's actually brass or copper or something that's sitting at the base of that soldering iron, just to scratch off any additional or any extra solder that's on there. Keep you from having issues with too much solder on the tip of the soldering iron. This video is a little long um, because there are quite a few parts to install. Some people find this very tedious work. Um, I find it quite enjoyable, actually. I think I mentioned this in a previous video. To me, it's, I work on computers all day long. I love technology, and I love amateur radio. So for me, it's a good combination, right? It's technology. I'm all about SDR. Um, I'm all about using computers to improve, amateur radio. And I'm impressed with how far things have come in amateur radio with the use of computers. Um, but on top of that, I enjoy electronics. I enjoy figuring out how things work, why they work, and trying to make them work. So, to me, while this may be, kind of like Legos for engineers, it's, It's almost calming and soothing to me to be able to work on something like this. Some people find it very frustrating, and for me, it's not. So, hopefully, some people watching this are the same way. So, it looks like I've got about three more, maybe two more resistors to install. And I'm leaving all of this footage in here just to try to paint a realistic picture for anybody who wants to build this. Um, I went through steps, oh, let's see, 2, 3, 4, and 5 today. I took I took some time in doing this, and I also edited videos and published these videos. So you could definitely build this entire thing in a day if you wanted to sit down and really crank through it. If you had some experience doing, you know, through hole type projects. But I don't recommend that. The reason I say I don't recommend it is you don't want to be in a rush for these types of things. You want to inspect things as you go along, as I've mentioned before. Make sure that your solder joints are great, and enjoy it. It's not a race. Even though I did knock out quite a bit of this board in one day. What you'll find is by step 4, you should be pretty proficient with soldering on this board, as long as those pads are clean. I didn't have any problem soldering on the board, so I I don't think that I think that first step of scrubbing the back side of this board is not a step that you should skip by any means. Um, just because you want solder to flow smoothly on those pads, you want it to stick to those pads, and by cleaning that board, it will do that. If you don't, all it takes is one guy that ate some French fries and touched that board, and next thing you know, your solder is not flowing smoothly on the board. Something else I do want to mention, I use lead-based solder. It's a lot easier to work with, in my opinion. In fact, I'll tell you what I'm using here. It's from Keister. It's rosin core. It's SN63 PB37. It's a .031 or .8 millimeter diameter, and that is the right size for this project. You get plenty of solder when you need it, and it's not so much that it just kills your your solder, your soldering iron. So this is the U4. When I say kills your soldering iron, I mean just loads it up with so much solder that it becomes frustrating to use. So that's U4. That's a potentiometer. Potentiometers are variable resistors. So I get that put in place, and the next thing we go on to is another resistor, then some capacitors. So, yeah, it's kind of difficult to talk through this entire process, and it would be incredibly boring if there was no sound happening at all. So I could, I guess, kick up some music or something, I don't know. But I don't have anything staged for that, so. I do want to mention, there's lots of great content on YouTube. I did find somebody else who built one of these on YouTube, and he did not follow the instructions. He was obviously an electrical engineer, and he just did it by looking at the schematic and figuring out what needed to go where and why. And he has a great um, video discussing exactly what each one of the components is doing, how it's working, how the logic gates are working, how the single sideband functions, um, which is great. Very good video. Highly recommend it. Um, what he did not do was show the process of building the board, probably because it's agonizingly boring if you're not the one doing it. However, um, I just I wanted to give a realistic view of what this is like for somebody who's on the fence about this project or a project like it. And I wanted to make everybody motion sick by me waving my head around looking for parts or looking for tools. Parts and tools. And where to put those parts. Oh, let's see. I should be on to some capacitors here or some more resistors, one or the other. Looks like maybe here I'm just trying to tuck a resistor back into the bag so I don't lose it. And with this project, you do a lot of this. You do a lot of looking around for various parts. It looks like here I'm about to put in C36, 37, 38, and 39, which are just some capacitors. Again, I clipped them off instead of trying to cut that tape or keep the legs long. It just doesn't make any sense to do that. The legs are plenty long enough by clipping them off there. Trying to find that part, where it goes, and I found it. Some of these become hard to put in with my large hands just because they're hard to hold on to. But by clipping those legs off, it does make it easier for me to get them into the holes. There I'm just checking to make sure that it is marked 104. Actually, what happened here, I do need to mention this. I think it was C38. C38 was already mounted on the board. And it really confused me because I wanted to make sure that C38 was the right capacitor and that I had not made a mistake. Um, it's actually installed as part of step 1. So again, the instructions need to be updated a little bit there because it is confusing when you're depending upon those instructions. You come down to that point and it costs time, it costs confusion, it costs, I don't know the right way to word it, but depend on the instructions. So here I go back and try to figure out where C38 was installed, and it's all the way back on the very first section, and it is the same size capacitor. So I think I just keep moving on. I do want to say that the instructions are very good, and it would be very difficult to write instructions for something like this. So I'm not trying to, point flaws by any means in anything with this kit. I enjoy it a lot. I just wanted to point out, just in case somebody's watching this, you know, uh, thinking about doing this project, you know, you could run across a couple things, especially if you're paying close attention to the manual, where something just doesn't add up at that point. It's worthwhile to take that time to go back and make sure that C38, for example, was installed previously, or you were told to install it previously. It is the correct type of component in that location, the correct value of component in that location, and you didn't make a mistake. So it looks like, let's see, where are we at here? Looks like some resistors are getting installed, and then we get to wind another toroid. I hope this is entertaining for some people. I don't know. I'm just trying to provide information, and trying to encourage some people maybe that haven't done a project like this before. They're inexpensive. Find something that you like, or a bit of kit, as they say in England, and those are capacitors actually, but find a bit of kit um, that you think you might use and give it a shot. I mean, worst case scenario, you spend 20 bucks, 25 bucks. It's not like you're buying a big expensive radio that has issues, or even buying used stuff. This is all a learning process. To me, ham radio is all about learning. And this was just another, I've done through hole stuff before, I've done surface mount stuff before. To me, this was just getting back into some through hole stuff after years of not doing it. And this kit came highly recommended. Um, Lots of great reviews on this kit from people who have done it. And there's great support for the kit online. Here I'm just going through, making sure that I've got everything installed right. I'm using that diagram again that's on the second page of each section of the install, or each group that gets installed together, and making sure that everything is in fact installed and looks good. I did find some things that I did not get to because I stopped at the toroid, I decided to go ahead and install R22, Q2, and U3 and 4 before installing the toroid. I don't think it matters. Um, the toroid was not any more difficult to get to after installing R22, Q2, and U2 and 3. R22 is a resistor, Q2 is a transistor, and the transistor is directional. You do have to make sure it matches the direction that's printed on the screen print, or silk screen on the board. U2 and U3 are also directional. Make sure you get that dot pointing in the correct direction. I may have mentioned this earlier. All of the dots either point up, and when I say up, I mean toward the back of the board, which is where all the jacks are, or point to the left. So if you have that board being held like I do, and you look at the front of it, all of those ICs go in one of two directions, either toward the jack on the back for the antenna, or to the left. So if you're looking at that board, up or left, one or the other. Here I'm going to start working on that toroid. It is a very small toroid. Let's see, it is a FT37-43. So if you're familiar and your toroid game is strong, it's like 0.37 inch diameter. Now, the way that they put this on there, there is I don't know what it is exactly, but it looks like they dropped some blue plastic or something that's hot, maybe some wax of some sort, on the paper. Then they put the toroid on it, and then they tape over it. So you've got to get all that stuff off the toroid. So it does take a second to get that wax pushed out if it doesn't stay on that paper. I tried a couple different things. I've used a screwdriver, I've used a razor blade, I've used whatever, but just straighten out. This is the green and red wire. So they are twisted together. It is, let's see, 14 turns. So again, the first turn is when you first put that wire through that toroid. Excuse me. Everything after that is another turn. So you actually end up with 13 loops when you're talking about 14 turns. But the wire goes through the center 14 times. So this is just me doing that for this toroid. I then strip the ends with that razor blade like I showed before. And then before I strip them, I actually separate the ends so that the reds are on one side, the greens are on another. And when I say one side, I mean you need to look in the manual and make sure that you've got those right for sure. Otherwise, your radio won't work and you won't know why. So I get 14 turns, and then I go back and count and straighten them up a little bit, just to make sure that everything looks okay. And then I separate the wires, get them lined out like they're supposed to be, and then strip them. Gotta get that enamel coating off of those wires so that solder will stick to those wires. Now, mind you, once you strip the enamel coating off, you're not going to know which one was red or green very easily, or I couldn't anyway. Again, I'm colorblind, so it's difficult anyway to see those colors. I can tell that there's a difference, and in time I've learned what red looks like and what green looks like. But if there's two shiny colors, like this enamel, it becomes very difficult for me. And as I scrape those ends, again, I don't do it so hard that I break the wire or anything, but I do get that enamel off of there. I think my camera dies here in just a second. The battery died on me, so you'll see a skip in the video here coming up pretty quick. One of the things I find is helpful is after I rough up that enamel, I take my fingernail and run it across there a few times. That seems to break that enamel off after I've pretty much chipped it all up or scraped it all up with a razor blade. They say that you can take a very hot soldering iron and touch that, and that enamel coating will just go away. I've never had much luck with that, so I've always scraped it. Getting 4 wires in those holes is a little more difficult. A pair of needle nose pliers like that may be beneficial in getting that last one in. So I give these little toroid wires a bit of a tug, then I lay them over, check them, make sure that I'm getting what I expect. Put it on audible so I can hear that things are in fact working as expected before I solder this thing down. There's a couple issues there. If you solder it and then you have to cut it loose, you've just lost your wire. So it's best to check this especially before you solder it down. So just make sure that everything looks good on the wire, or I'm sorry, on the toroid. Clip it, do some more testing on it, make sure that I get what I'm expecting. After I soldered it, make sure that there's nothing crazy going on there. I mean, I check it all the way across multiple times here. So that pretty much wraps up, step 5 here. So if you've stuck around and watched all these videos, you're obviously interested in building one of these or something like it. We're almost done. Step 6 group assembly is the transmit strip. What I can say is that this device, Q4, you have to be very careful with. We'll go over that and I'll show that in depth with the next group, but we are on the officially done with 5, going on to 6. I'll probably do that tomorrow night and post a video out there tomorrow night after Monday Night Ham Radio. Speaking of Monday Night Ham Radio, if you don't know about it, man, it's awesome. I love watching everybody's videos. There's some POTA, soda, just news, reviews, and how-tos. There's Good game ham radio down there. There's usually Smoke and Ape with some lid tips or something. There's a lot of good content coming out for ham radio on Mondays. And it's one right after the other, right after the other. And the conversation, the chat, um, if you enjoy humor, uh, normally there's a lot of it in there. It's a good time. I highly recommend it. So look it up. You can usually, what I would do is I would subscribe to um, temporarily offline. And if you look at the people I'm subscribed to, I've got it all public. You can go out there and find these guys. But temporarily online usually publishes a this is how lazy we are. Usually publishes a, what is that called? Playlist. So basically, you just start the playlist and you sit back. And if you don't want to get in on the conversation that's going on, you don't have to. But there's a lot of fun, a lot of good times. You'll meet a lot of really cool people, not just putting on the content, and they do a great job and they put a lot of work into it. And I appreciate them for doing that. But also just people in the chat from all around the world, people from New Zealand, England, and they're up, they're watching. Um, all over the United States, there's people from Mid America, Central America. There's people from Europe, France, all over the place that get on. Plus, it introduces you to a group of people that are out there to help you out. So, anyway, I'm going to say 70-30 for now. I'm going to go get some sleep, and we'll go ahead and work on group 6 tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around through all this. I know it's not real exciting, but I appreciate you. Please like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. Thanks, guys.